This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day. Carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Alrighty, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us on the Fully Managed podcast. Thank you, Neal, for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
The honor is all mine, Shannon. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, no, the honor is all mine. You can't just take that from me.
Well, wait a minute here. The honor is mine.
But wait, oh no. Well, I'm very excited to have you today, Neal. As usual, we're going to start with a game. I customized the game for every person. So this will be a fun little thing to participate, make you brighten up your day a little bit, have a little giggle. So I think you'll really just laugh at the name. So the name, so original, is Neal or No Deal. So I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios in which you may deal with in your, line of work. And then you are either going to say Neal in as if you would do this, or you think this is a good idea, or no deal. That's going to trip me up a lot. Or no deal, in which you wouldn't do this. And you can give a reason why.
Okay. Fair enough.
Okay. Alrighty. The first one is using ChatGPT to draft LinkedIn posts.
Neal. The key verb there is draft.
Mm-hmm.
Use another verb, it might have been no deal.
Yeah, exactly. You still need to read them over, make sure that they're, actually your voice and everything. Make sure that there's no errors. I completely understand. Okay.
Yeah, the whole idea about AI and ChatGPT, it should actually amplify who is you, what is you, your experience, your expertise, your perspective. If using it is not doing that and you're trying to create something new that doesn't represent you, that is absolutely the wrong way. And morally, there's an issue with that.
Yeah, ethically, that's not you. And people think that it's you, and therefore that doesn't mean. Exactly. Okay, next one is cold messaging 100 people with the same pitch.
No deal.
No deal.
Come on.
Yeah. It's do we have to cover it?
A lot of people do this. Now that, I am not a big cold messaging, cold email person. There are others who get great results, but the ones who get great results personalize every single one of those messages. And I'm not just saying, hey, first name, but the actual content of it as well. It's all about relevance. If it's not relevant and personalized, it's not going to be effective. So I would never recommend you just cut and paste the same thing, even though we often receive a lot of messages like that. So I hope if you're listening that you'll change your ways.
Hey guys, I understand testing a certain strategy if you're doing cold outreach normally, like testing what kind of verbiage works and different things like that. And that's the only way that I can kind of understand having a uniform pitch for something, because maybe you're sending out a certain amount to a certain group of people and seeing if what the response rate is. But at the same time, there's no better response rate than with a personal approach.
Amen.
Exactly. Okay, next one. AI-generated influencers becoming the face of brand campaigns.
Ooh, for me, that's a no deal. I know that there's some brands who are experimenting with it, but the whole idea about influencer marketing is that influencers have, because of their humanness and their authenticity, they're able to generate deep emotional connections with their community that brands are then able to basically leapfrog on and utilize. There have been some avatars that do it, but when I see an avatar and, in Japan where it's sort of like anime culture, there are some brands that have used, those sort of virtual AI, avatars that have done fairly well. But I think for most companies, unless you're doing something really, really unique, I would always go with actual real people than going with a virtual, entity to represent your brand.
Yeah, no, I can definitely agree with that. And I understand what you're saying about anime specifically, in which, like, in some fields, maybe it would work. Like, for example, like, maybe if you're an agency and your creative is specifically around, like, cartoon, or, like, specifically around, like, a certain, like, creative approach, then maybe an avatar that's AI generated that is that specific kind of animation or something like that. Like, maybe that might work because that's already the appeal of your agency or, like, your business, in which you can spin it that way. But, like, for just a regular agency that's not involved in that kind of world, why unpersonalize your approach and reaching your audience?
Yep. Keep it real.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be the entire encompassing point of this whole episode.
Sounding that way.
Okay, last one, and then we'll get into just you. Okay, so, okay, this one is very controversial because I see it on LinkedIn a lot, actually. Posting personal life updates on LinkedIn.
I'd say Neal. And the reason is that LinkedIn has changed. I had this conversation this morning with someone else. It's the social media has changed over the last 15 years. So there are a lot of older people who still treat LinkedIn like it was back in, 2010. But millennials are now probably a majority of the workforce, if my numbers and the data I hear is right. So we are all becoming very social first, and we're sharing more content. And I think it's only natural that people have personal updates they want to share. I would also say that it's the personal updates on LinkedIn that actually help you build an emotional connection with people that you can't build through professional updates. So I would not post 100% personal updates on LinkedIn, but I do think they have a role, and when used together with other content strategies can be quite effective.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. And I do think that the majority of the people in which I see post personal life updates are probably in the millennial era, which kind of makes sense. I'm sure there are things that are too personal, and, like, someone would be like, that's wacky, maybe you shouldn't post that on a professional platform. But there are definitely a lot of ways in which people feel like you're more human when they hear about, like, specifically mistakes I think that people make when, like, whether it's work related or not. I think that those are my favorite things to see on LinkedIn that humanize people and, like, are relatable, because for a long time I feel like the professional world was not a place in which to share things that you've learned in that way.
And it should be, because we're all
Yeah.
human, right?
Exactly. And I love the promotion of that, in that you learn more from your failures than maybe your successes.
Totally.
So speaking of LinkedIn, Neal, so you use LinkedIn, has been, like, a huge platform in your work. Do you have any advice that you would share specifically that you think would help someone in their own LinkedIn strategy?
Wow. Shannon, where do we begin?
Yeah, I know. You were like, there's a book, like everything.
Yeah, there's actually 3 books I've written on LinkedIn. So I think it really begins with the mindset that if you are a professional and you are, let's just begin with your own personal brand, right? And even if you're an entrepreneur, an agency owner, small business owner, it's often that personal brand that has gotten you clients, that has gotten you word of mouth. So I think LinkedIn, just first of all, as being the center of your personal branding universe, your professional universe, it has a special role. It's not Facebook. It's not Instagram. It's not TikTok. And those platforms all have a role as well. But everybody should consider LinkedIn as that central place for personal branding, because you never know where your career is going to take you. You never know where your business is going to take you. You never know when someone's going to look you up on LinkedIn and go, what is this person about? Because that is the default place where people look. So, I teach a class on personal branding here at UCLA Extension in LA. And the simple definition, and I love to simplify things. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, is attributed to saying this, but personal branding is just about what people say about you when you're not in the room, right? So that's just a really easy way of thinking about it. You cannot control that, but what you can control is the image of what they may say about you when you're not in the room. And that comes down to your profile. So the first is the mindset of, I'm going to use LinkedIn. It's a special place. I'm going to give it the time, the TLC it deserves, because that's where I want to build my professional brand. And then second, starting with a profile that is branded, that really tells your story the way you want it to be told. So that when people talk about you, the important points that you want to make sure that are brought up are actually brought up in your profile. That's the easiest, those two things alone, I think will get you pretty far if you haven't really been paying close attention to LinkedIn, or maybe you set up an account 2 years ago and you've done nothing with it since.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so a question about that is, yes, I think I agree with you that a lot of people have built their personal brand authentically, maybe not using any kind of like LinkedIn approach or anything even online. Like a lot of agencies who started so long ago, that wasn't even a big, heavy part of how they created these connections. Well, what kind of advice would you give to someone who specifically is maybe a very like charismatic person in person, but is horrible at branding themselves? Like maybe they're just not good at making connections online because it feels inauthentic to them, or like it's just not where they're best at creating their own personality. Like what would you recommend for that kind of person?
Yeah, I've actually, I have a collaboration with a B2B marketplace. So I've had the opportunity to interview a number of agency owners recently. And a few of them are exactly that you said. Mm-hmm. They've built amazing businesses, but they're really introvert. So I'm like, hey, do you ever want to do like an event together? It's like, well, we don't really do events. We don't really put ourselves out in public. It's just not our style. I'm like, okay. But, we mentioned millennials being a majority of people in the workforce and majority of a lot of the content we see on LinkedIn. We also see Gen Z that are now becoming older. They're now entering the workforce. Mm-hmm. And these are both generations that place a lot of value in investing in companies and brands that they have an attachment to. So I believe that the personal brand, especially if you're an agency owner, if you can translate that charisma online, it allows you to expand your sphere of influence, your reach. So I think that there is a way, even if you're an introvert, right? You don't have to like go into your feed and talk to 20 different people a day. It's really about taking what you already tell people and putting that in an online context, even if it's once a week, because then people begin to see the face behind the agency, the culture behind the agency, and they understand it in a different way, because you can publish something from your LinkedIn company page that is in third person, or coming from an actual person with an actual photo in first person, that then when you look at their profile, they are the founder of, Acme Agency. It's going to resonate very, very differently, because this is the way that social media works. We resonate with people more than we do brands. And I would say, and this is the topic of another book that I'm working on, that I believe the personal brand, being an entrepreneur and, a business owner and having a personal brand, they absolutely go hand in hand more than ever because of the online world that we live in. And LinkedIn is just the perfect place for that. So you don't need to even have a selfie if you don't want to, but how do we translate that charisma into online content, into an online presence? That is something that I look forward to working with future clients on, because I think that there's a huge need for that as we speak.
How do you get so those people specific, those introverts specifically, I see, and I've talked to other people that have worked with like getting people kind of on their feet in these spaces, like LinkedIn specifically. It seems like they have a lot of level of like imposter syndrome, where like they don't like to speak about things because they don't feel like they have the authority to do so, or whatever it may be. Like, is there any kind of way that you can get through to them in speaking about that?
Okay, Shannon, we're going to go really deep in this episode.
Okay.
there are three human truths that we all have, or that 99% of us have. Number one is we procrastinate. Number two is that we have imposter syndrome. And number three, we have this curse of knowledge that says, who am I to talk about? Everybody already knows about that. And I think that we all have all of these, some to more or less extent, but even I have imposter syndrome. Even I get faced with the curse of knowledge or procrastination, like most of us. So that is being human, right? But the way to get over it, once you get over that, once you publish something and you get positive feedback, that's how you get over that. right? It's like, oh my gosh, people actually care. People actually found value. I should keep doing this. And that's really the only way to get over it, is to do it. So what you have experienced in your life, what your thoughts are, that's not imposter syndrome. Those are unique to you. So you're just sharing your perspective. I mean, you're not going to make any less friends by doing it. You're only going to make more friends, right? Or you're going to be ignored. But if you didn't publish the content in the first place, you're already being ignored. So like with anything else in life, there's advantages and disadvantages. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to push you out of your comfort zone, but if you want to find growth in life in general, you sort of need to get out of that comfort zone. And I think once again, this is sort of a universal human truth. And I've been doing this for more than 15 years, as you know, Shannon, but really the landscape has not changed in these 15 years. But once you start to do it and you start to get some feedback as a human, when you get that feedback loop going, it gives you more confidence. It gives you more energy, more passion, and it starts you on that path. And that's really where I want to get people started walking down that road towards getting that positive feedback.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that sentiment because I think it is a very intimidating for a lot of people that are not necessarily involved in that world. Like, they can be so incredible with their business when it comes to digital, but then or like even building a brand for someone else, but then promoting their own personal brand is where, they're scared because they believe in other people a lot more than they maybe believe in themselves sometimes. And that's sad because people create such amazing things, and they're not confident or comfortable with like promoting themselves, and it feels like even sometimes maybe self-centered or something like that. I think that's people's worries, but it shouldn't be so.
No, it shouldn't. And I mean, if you're not there to sell anything, then especially it shouldn't be so. And you shouldn't be there to sell something. You should be there to create human connection. So anything that you would say in an offline context. Now, there are some controversial topics I recommend you don't talk about on social media, like, politics, religion, etc. But outside of that, in a professional context, if you go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting or you go to an in-person meeting or a conference and you have conversations where you talk about your point of view, you can immediately bring those online. There's no reason why you shouldn't.
I completely agree. I think that everyone has their own set of skills and expertise, and everyone has something to give, even if it's not, if they don't think it's valuable, it's definitely valuable to someone. And maybe you just need help reaching those people.
And you never know who it might be valuable to.
Exactly. Well, so speaking about you specifically, what was your pivotal moment in which you felt like this is what I should be doing? Because I think that that's something that people really have trouble doing, especially in our kind of industry. There's usually like this moment, like this aha moment in which you realize you want to be in this industry, and this is what you want to do. What was that like for you, or building towards that too?
Well, like I said, I began this more than 15 years ago. And I would say that, there are people now, I haven't talked to like in 5 years, digital marketers. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, I specifically built a niche around AI ads. Right. So, another friend of mine, he did web design. Last 6 months, generative AI. All it took for him was one client to be able to create his own framework, his own workshop. So I believe that at the beginning, it has to start with a niche, something that you're really passionate about, something that you know deeply. For me, back in 2008, I'm aging myself here, was LinkedIn, because I knew it at a level that most people just thought it was a place where you only connect with people you know, and you just go there looking for a job. So my B2B sales background really helped give me a fresh perspective, and living and working in Asia for 15 years helped give it a very holistic perspective. And I just, I'd show up at local networking meetings here in Orange County, California, and I became known as the LinkedIn guy, right? The LinkedIn person. Oh, ask Neal your LinkedIn questions. Neal, will you present for us? So that led me to launching a blog. And I launched my blog July 4th, 2008. I still remember the day. And I would get comments, and they were positive comments. I would share the content on LinkedIn. I'd get positive feedback. And that led to writing a book, and then more speaking engagements. And then it was January 2010 where in the course of 2 weeks, I actually had 4 potential consulting clients. And I hadn't even launched a consultancy yet, but they needed help with their social media. And there were 4 companies from 4 different industries. And that's really where I flipped the switch that said, I'm going to go from corporate employee to entrepreneur. So, everybody's journey is going to be very, very different, but it started with going deep into a topic and then getting out into the world where you can be recognized. So, I did it through in-person networking, but you could do it through online LinkedIn as well, or online whatever platform. But it's the combination of deep interest, passion, and being social, whether it's virtual or physical, that leads to these opportunities. And then when you see the signal, you got to jump at it, because no one is going to say, "Hey, Neal, this is the hint that you need to do this. You need to figure it out yourself." And some entrepreneurs catch it at the right time and they just take off. Others never catch it. Others might be slow. Others might go a different direction. But, entrepreneurship, you're going to fail 90% of the time. You just need to get started in the process.
Yeah. It's just so, well, okay. Many questions from your story is, first, why LinkedIn? Because way back when, I would see that maybe a lot of people did not see the potential in that in ways in which you did. So what started that interest for you and becoming an expert on that specific social platform?
Well, I was in B2B sales, and I was actually regional vice president of Asia sales for high tech companies, right? And in these high tech industries, I was dealing with semiconductors and software. It often came down to who you knew. In fact, every sale, my boss would say, "Neal, you closed that sale because of you and your relationship with that executive and the fact that executive liked you." Mm-hmm. So there's the aspect of becoming friends with clients that would generate business. There's also the aspect of who you knew. I would often get referrals from other companies, partner companies, distributors, system integrators that were part of this general ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And the more friendships and contacts you had, generally speaking, the more leads you would get when done in the right way. So when I saw LinkedIn emerging, I became a member in 2004, one of the first 1 million, because I worked in high tech, and another Silicon Valley person was a connection of a friend of mine said, "Hey, you should join LinkedIn." I'm like, "Why?" And I remember this back and forth conversation we had. Ended up joining. I didn't really do much with it, but it was really when I came back, and this is a serendipitous moment for me. I lived in Asia after graduating from college, came back, and then I ended up being looking for my first job in the United States. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have a local network because I went to school back east and I started my career in Asia. So what am I going to do? And that's when I decided, well, I'm going to start my network on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So there is, that is part of the story I probably should have mentioned. So that's
I was like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Didn't use LinkedIn until in the last 10 years, maybe. I would say.
Exactly. Now, not to find a job, but to network, right? Network with people in my industry, make connections, maybe some informational interviews back in the day. But if you spend an hour in any platform every day, you are going to become very, very well versed in that platform, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's TikTok or LinkedIn. Few people do that, right? And that's really, you need to become a heavy consumer of something in order to fully and deeply understand it. So I became a deep consumer of LinkedIn. And most people didn't have time to do everything that I was doing because I was in transition at the time. And that led to, but I always had that B2B sales perspective that, this is going to be the networking vehicle. I'm going to build a network that's going to support me throughout my career, was really where I was going and what has become, in reality.
Do you have any connections that you made very early on that you still have today and which you really value, or you feel like, snowballed into a very great opportunity?
Oh, tons. I think that the number one area where that's happened is Japan. So I lived in Japan 15 years. And when I came back to the US, I still wanted to do business there, because when you look at all these social media experts, how many of them are fluent in Japanese, right? So I knew I had an advantage. Mm-hmm. And I also know that having my wife being Japanese and my kids being bilingual, that, over the course of life, I was going to be going back there a lot. And therefore I wanted to build a network there as well, focusing around social media marketing, digital marketing. So everything I built there has come from me starting a LinkedIn group that had actual in-person meetings whenever I went back to Japan, to looking up someone, hey, are there any Amherst College alumni in Japan? And then connecting with someone who is actually in social media, who we're still friends today. In fact, I'm going to be meeting him when I'm in Japan later this week. And he, through that friendship, he's, we've done paid events together. He's introduced me to paying clients. And just, every time going back to Japan, meeting more and more people. But a lot of the relationships started from LinkedIn, starting from networking, looking for people. Hey, I'm going to be in town. I noticed that you're VP marketing for a company in a certain industry. I've served other companies. I'd love to, join you for a cup of coffee to give you the latest updates on what's happening in the United States, right? So it's little things like that. But yeah, that has definitely yielded business for me. There's been other business from LinkedIn, but a gentleman joined one of my webinars. He was a LinkedIn connection, and I had promoted the webinar on LinkedIn. He joined. He said, Neal, just by the way, I work for this publisher, and if you're ever interested in publishing with us, let us know. And that led to, HarperCollins Leadership, a contract that led to The Age of Influence, which is a book on influencer marketing I wrote. So, and there's other anecdotes I can share, but yeah, when you get out there and you have a purpose and an objective, and you build your network in such a way, it can be quite lucrative for whatever that means for you.
Yeah, no, I think that's really lovely, and I do believe that connection being at like the foundation of any kind of even a business, whatever kind of relationship it is, business, friendship, whatever it may be, like just putting effort towards that can always be beneficial regardless of whether you get something like directly transactional out of it. It's just something that, like, I don't know, you never know what you don't know. It's like when you find out that you had a really good friendship with someone growing up, and then you find out they become a mechanic, and you get all of your mechanic all of your car stuff for maybe you get at least a car expert, so you know when someone's taking advantage of you at a different mechanic shop. But it's like that.
I will connect. So, and I talk about this in my books, and I'm not here to self promote, but I look for, hey, I'm in Orange County, California. I want to connect with other marketers here, right? To network. And I look for marketers that we have a lot of mutual connections. So we have a lot of mutual friendships, and those, generally speaking, they're easier to connect with. But I don't like when we connect the next day say, hey, I have this new course. I'm not being salesy. Yeah. It's in having the network, right? And never knowing when you might want to call on them or they call on you. But I want to share with you. So I've been doing this in Japan for over a decade. So this is the message that I've been sending out to people. Not every connection, but those that I really want to meet on this next trip I'm doing. Hi, so-and-so. Hope you're doing well. I noticed and I want to share this with you just for some context. I noticed we're connected here on LinkedIn, and I realized we haven't had the chance to meet in person yet. I'm heading to Tokyo this week, one of my regular visits there, and I always enjoy connecting face-to-face with my network when I'm in town. As a fractional CMO who focuses on digital marketing and AI trends, I find these conversations incredibly valuable. There's always something to learn from each other's experiences. I'm also a speaker and educator. But honestly, I get more insights from conversations like these than from any other book that I read. Would you be up for grabbing coffee or a beer if you have an hour free that week? Happy to come to your office or meet, whatever works best for you. No agenda other than getting to know each other and seeing if there are ways we might be able to collaborate or help each other out. That, in essence, is to me what networking is all about, right?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that sort of conveys my perspective on networking, and you're building this like lifelong, group of people that you can both collaborate with, right? One of the guys I reached out to, he is the president of a marketing agency in Tokyo, American. He has a bilingual daughter who wants to go to a high school in Tokyo where I went to college for a summer. And so I said, Neal, my daughter really wants to go to this high school. What did you think about your experience there, right? I can help him. And I had no idea, but once, I reached out to him and he went to my profile, he goes, there's a connection there. And we all have that. And that's why on your profile, you want to build those connection points. So if you volunteer for an organization, this is a big one. I coach a manager for my kids' soccer team. I put those things on there because I know that if there's another soccer coach, AYSO coach out there, it's really going to connect with them. So help people make the connections with you through all these details you put in your LinkedIn profile. I'll stop there. I know that was a lot.
No, that wasn't a lot. There's I love connections that are kind of serendipitous, in which they kind of work out, in which they're able to help each other, because I think that people who are thinking about relationships in a way in which it's transactional, like I scratch your back, you scratch mine kind of thing, you're never going to have real authentic relationships through thinking about them like that. Yes, of course, it's a great plus in which when you're you make a connection with someone and you realize, down the line, maybe we can work together kind of thing. And a lot of people do, there's nothing wrong with reaching out for having that purpose in mind, but to be able to have these connections in which you can help someone, in which there's not necessarily expecting something in return, but it's just a familiarity and something that, it just works out in that way, and when someone's reaching out and you can help them. I love that, because it's great when you have that kind of relationship and you build something that works off of it. And those are the best relationships you can have, whether in business or friendship or anything.
Yeah, I keep going back to my roots. When I wrote my first book back in 2009, I talked about, pay it forward, the bank account of karma. And in networking, you really have to have a heart of serving others. When you serve others, it comes back to you in dividends. And I'll be honest with you, of those messages I sent on LinkedIn, I had one gentleman, he just came back with, Neal, are you an angel investor? Right? It's like, and there are some people who play off the transactional. I get it. They're at different levels.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sorry to say, but unfortunately, I'm not an angel investor. Will I message that person in the future? Maybe not, right? And that's okay, because there's other people out there that I can be messaging. So I just want to encourage you to build that local network of like-minded people, whether it be by location, whether it be by industry, whether it be by school affiliation, that will help you in the future.
I think that was a perfect place to end, because we just got over to the perfect mark. But I really appreciate you sharing all this with me, Neal, especially like focusing on relationship building. I really resonate with that. And I hope that the more that this gets put out there, because I also have other guests that share similar sentiments in like that idea of care and like generosity, that I hope the more it goes out there, especially on this podcast and people listening, the more it's promoted and the more people see that as the way to do business, because it's not always like that in the country. But I hope that kindness and generosity is promoted more often than.
We live in a very divided world, but we all have the same human needs. And it's really about tapping into that and serving that. And serving with gratitude. And I'm not saying that in a religious way, but just in a human way. We're all here together. Let's try to make this a better place than it was, when we leave. So it's all just part of that mindset.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this and for sharing your experience. And I hope that everyone can check out Neal in the description of this video, and the book that is to come. I know there's a new one coming soon, correct?
Oh, yes. Well, actually, wait for that moment here. I just put it back in. There we go. The updated and expanded version of Maximizing LinkedIn for Business Growth. So this actually, in another week or two, you'll see it hit Amazon. And that'll have all my up-to-date thoughts, including my recommendations on using AI for your LinkedIn journey.
Beautiful. Well, your website will also be in the description so that people can find that as well. So guys, please check it out. And if you're interested in LinkedIn, like we talked about in this chat, then please look for more. Thank you so much, Neal, for joining me again. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and have a lovely rest of your day.
Ciao.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.